Gentlemen, I think it is finally time to talk about single player in Unbound. Now, we already have a few videos about what could be added to single player and how the story should have been more in depth with the characters, but what we have not talked about is the absence of content itself in the single player game mode. The best way I could describe this situation is Criterion pulled a Rockstar. They pulled a GTA 5. If any of you all have played through the story mode on GTA 5 and then hopped onto the online portion, you know exactly what I'm talking about. A stupid amount of new content for online that seems like it drops every other week. Meanwhile, you have everything that was grinded for in the story mode decaying and collecting dust. I went back and booted up Unbound for a little while and clicked on the story mode, just to see if I and the whole Need for Speed community that plays the game had somehow been mistaken and maybe Criterion was secretly adding content. Nope. My car was in the exact same place I left it when I completed the story a year ago. The same races were on the map. There were no Drift Pro events or tires, no drift and drag, no new tracks, no nothing. It is truly insane to think about the time that went into creating the story mode, only for the whole thing to seemingly be abandoned as soon as the game launched. I know whoever designed and created everything the single player has to offer has to be pretty mad about how it all turned out. If you cannot already tell, this video is not going to be something cheery and full of rainbows praising the game. So if that is your cup of tea, please leave the premises. For all of you that will be staying, if you enjoy, make sure to go ahead and drop a like and subscribe to the channel, and let's get into it. We have gotten volume after volume that has dropped an insane amount of content. Yet when you log into single player, you wouldn't even know it, besides the casual drop of new cars you can use in single player. And the funny thing about that is that half the new cars you can't even transfer over to single player, so even that isn't fully reliable. If we truly break down the things that were added to multiplayer, I cannot think of a valid reason why they were not added to the solo mode as well. If someone can find something on what a dev team member or a game designer regarding why these things were not added said about it, I would love to see it. Let's look at something super simple like drift and drag update first. The tracks that are used to participate in those events are the same tracks that can be found when exploring the regular single player map, so the issue of having the tracks in two separate places cannot be the problem. On top of this, the assets that are used, such as the checkpoints and the traffic, also function the exact same, and when going through races that use portions of the drift and drag tracks, the traffic has the exact same spawn pattern as multiplayer, so that can't be the issue either. If any update were to be a part of the single player, I could see drift and drag making the most sense, since in my opinion, that is the easiest to incorporate AI drivers into, especially since all the AI have already been established throughout the story and their assets, including their character's car and their car's performance, exist already due to the story mode. Plus, as said before, it seems like a copy and paste situation that could silence a lot of people that complain about single player and the lack of content. The drift tires and new handling model could have been added as well. Adding this to the AI may be a bit difficult, but definitely doable. I am not a game dev, but I mean, come on now. If this stuff was able to be added to every single individual's car who you don't know what they drive like when equipping the Drift Pro tires in multiplayer, there is no way that you could not have added them to AI that can be controlled by code and has a predictable and scripted path. Going back to the adding car aspect of single player versus multiplayer, that is truly pathetic and in my opinion a full slap in the face to those who play solo with dedication. You're showing them that you can add things from multiplayer and not just the other way around. Before we got all these other cars and junk, it seemed to be that only cars you got from single player story mode would transfer over to multiplayer. No money, no other cars, really nothing of important value. But then all of a sudden when you click into single player, you have the R8 staring you dead in the face? You have the Lotus in your garage? As far as I am concerned, these cars were not available before the volumes dropped, which were multiplayer oriented. On top of this, the cars added from Kaizen have the new handling mode, which dropped before the drift and drag update, meaning a new handling model was introduced into single player way before. Why is the new drifting handling model not in single player when the racing one is? These things prove that things from multiplayer can be added to single player as far as I'm concerned, yet it seems to just stop with the cars. You add the new cars from the volume, but no hot pursuit mode from the exact same volume? To their credit, I will play devil's advocate for a split second and say that turning a primarily multiplayer game mode into something for single player may have caused a few issues since the original design was for PvP, but still, that could have still been done. Even if these updates came a few weeks later compared to the multiplayer versions, I think the community who is solo would have still appreciated the fact they could play at all. Now, something like Lockdown, which is pure PvP, I can 100% understand why that would not have been put in single player. A solo mode most likely wasn't even designed or thought about, and the reason why we could do it at all in the multiplayer version was due to a bug or a glitch in the matchmaking. I do agree with a lot of the stuff the single player community is asking for and their frustrations, but with Lockdown, it truly does not make any sense. There are a few reasons why I personally think the team did not really put any effort towards single player, and I'll list them out for you guys right now. Number 1, money and the ability to capitalize off multiplayer using drip feed content and paid bundles. Number 2, the popularity of multiplayer versus single player and how the market for things like that is not big enough to set aside time to create it. And 3, it may have simply not have been a priority for the team. With the first point, we all know EA is the literal definition of greed. It was only a matter of time that Unbound was going to start having paid bundles and microtransactions. Luckily, they were not what I predicted in the beginning of the game, which was money packs and rank boosters, but they still did show up eventually. Multiplayer is way easier to make money with extra content than single player is due to players being in close proximity with each other, especially in something like a racing game. It is clear that the new cars have an advantage over every car in the base game, and at this point in time, you have to pay for their use. When a player sees another player using the new Kais and handling cars and winning over and over again, what do they have the desire to do? They have the desire to buy that pack or packs and spend money on the game. Multiply that with a bunch of people who have done the exact same thing, and now we have somewhat significant money being made. On the other side, if it was just single player, then there was no one to compare with and no one to influence. You bought the pack, but your spread of how broken the car is reaches no one because you are racing against bots. It's no secret that multiplayer has continued to run the video game market, and not just Need for Speed, but a lot of other games as well. To its credit, single player does seem to be making a slight comeback with great indie games being released alongside bangers like the new Assassin's Creed, the successor to Ghost of Tsushima, and Ghost of Tsushima itself, and games like God of War, to mention a few. But then we have titans like GTA and Call of Duty on the other side who focus pretty much entirely on multiplayer, which lines their pockets. A lot of new video game players and younger players in general tend to gravitate towards multiplayer games so they can play with their friends and play with others around the world. As we apply this to Unbound, the team is well known to be rushed pretty much the entire time they created the game and with post-launch support. One of the reasons why single player wasn't updated is maybe they thought the number of players who would continue to be on single player would be significantly less than those on multiplayer, hence why the funds and resources went to somewhere else. The last point being that it may have not been a priority for the team could be correct, it could not be. But with all the stuff that is dropped for multiplayer and single player only getting the scraps, if you can even call them that, it truly does seem like the story mode was not a real target for the dev team and everyone else who had a part to play. It is unfortunate that this is the case considering how much could have been done with the exact same map that multiplayer has. Literally no difference between the two, things could have been ported over with little to no issues. Put the new tracks in and put the bots in with the players and there you go. Everyone is happy. Heat did it. Why can't Unbound do it? But this is a problem that is now 2 years old. The chances that something will come from this video or come in general is pretty small, but it's still good to talk about it and bring awareness. I know a lot of you guys feel strongly about this, so please let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed, make sure to go ahead and drop a like and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video.